The American dream is built on a foundation of prosperity, stability, and the promise of a secure future. For generations, that security has been anchored by the state you call home, a source of jobs, education, and essential public services. But what if that foundation is starting to crack? What if the financial stability of some of America's most iconic states is hanging by a thread? You've heard of companies going bankrupt. You might even remember a city like Detroit facing financial ruin. But what about an entire state? The idea seems impossible, but for a number of states across the nation, a toxic combination of massive debt, unfunded pension obligations, and shrinking populations has created a financial crisis that could be just a few years away from breaking point. Today, we're going beyond the headlines to explore 10 states that could go bankrupt in the next 5 years. We're not talking about a collapse overnight, but a steady erosion of fiscal health that could lead to a severe and unprecedented crisis. This isn't just a story about numbers. It's a story about the future of millions of Americans, the quality of their schools, the safety of their streets, and the promise of a secure retirement. To understand which states are on the financial brink, we first have to know what we're looking for. A state can't officially go bankrupt in the same way a person or a company can. There's no federal law or formal process to declare state-level bankruptcy. However, a state can become functionally insolvent, a term that means it can no longer meet its financial obligations without resorting to extreme and painful measures. The single biggest factor pushing many states toward this edge is unfunded pension liabilities. This is money that a state's government has promised to its public workers, teachers, firefighters, police officers for their retirement, but it hasn't set aside enough money to pay for it. Think of it as a massive, long-term credit card bill that just keeps growing. For some states, this debt runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's a promise that taxpayers are on the hook to keep. Another major red flag is a high debt per capita. This is a simple metric. Take a state's total debt and divide it by the number of people living there. A high number suggests that the burden of the state's financial mismanagement is being passed directly down to its citizens. We also have to consider economic stagnation and population decline. A state's revenue relies on taxes from its citizens and businesses. If a state is losing residents, especially high-income earners, its tax base shrinks. At the same time, it still has to pay for its existing obligations, creating a deeper and deeper budget hole. Finally, relying too heavily on a single industry can be a dangerous gamble. While a boom can bring in massive revenue, a bust can leave the state's budget in free fall with no safety net to fall back on. With these red flags in mind, let's explore the 10 states that face the most serious financial risks in the coming years. Illinois is often cited as the poster child for state fiscal irresponsibility. The primary reason? Its staggering pension debt. Analysts estimate the state's unfunded pension liabilities are somewhere in the range of $140 billion. But some argue the true number is much higher, potentially reaching $500 billion when all long-term obligations are counted. The state constitution makes it nearly impossible to cut pension benefits, leaving lawmakers with a grim choice. Either drastically raise taxes or slash funding for essential services like education, infrastructure, and healthcare. This fiscal mess has contributed to a steady exodus of residents, further eroding the state's tax base and trapping it in a dangerous cycle. Just across the Hudson from New York City, New Jersey faces its own set of gargantuan financial problems. Like Illinois, its largest fiscal issue is unfunded public employee pensions. The state has consistently failed to make its full pension payments, kicking the can down the road and allowing the debt to balloon. This, combined with some of the highest property taxes in the nation, has led to a significant outmigration of residents, particularly retirees and young families. The state's reliance on its aging public sector and its high cost of living are a potent mix, leaving little room for error in an economic downturn. At first glance, it seems absurd to put California on this list. It is the world's fifth largest economy and a hub of innovation. But California's financial health is more volatile than it appears. The state has a massive and growing debt, particularly in its unfunded teacher pension fund, which is the largest in the country. A significant portion of its tax revenue comes from a small number of extremely wealthy individuals, making its budget highly vulnerable to swings in the stock market. A sharp market correction or a significant downturn could crater the state's tax revenues, leading to a swift and severe budget crisis. Kentucky is home to one of the most underfunded pension systems in the United States. Its pension debt is so severe that it is often referred to as a five-alarm fire. For decades, the state failed to adequately fund its promises to public workers, leading to a situation where the debt has grown exponentially. The problem is so dire that even drastic measures, like increasing taxes or cutting services, may not be enough to fix it without a major financial intervention. The state's fiscal problems cast a long shadow over its ability to attract new businesses and talent, trapping it in a cycle of limited economic growth. Massachusetts is another state with a massive economy and a huge debt problem. It holds one of the highest debt per capita figures in the nation. While the state's tax revenues from the booming tech and biotech sectors are strong, its long-term liabilities, particularly in retiree health care, are staggering. The state has accumulated tens of billions of dollars in promises to retirees that it has no way to pay for. Much like California, its budget is highly dependent on a prosperous stock market and a wealthy tax base, making it extremely vulnerable to economic shocks. New York State's fiscal health is a mirror of its massive public spending and high debt. The state has one of the highest debt per capita burdens in the country. It is heavily reliant on a small number of wealthy individuals for its tax revenue, making it a high-risk state in the event of an economic downturn. The outmigration of residents, particularly from New York City, has been a persistent problem, and if it continues, it could significantly erode the state's tax base and deepen its fiscal crisis. Pennsylvania faces a double whammy of economic and fiscal challenges. Its long-term pension liabilities are a major concern, as the state has consistently underfunded its public employee pension systems. Additionally, the state has a slow-growing economy and a high number of legacy industries that are struggling to compete. This combination of massive debt and limited economic growth puts Pennsylvania in a precarious position, with little room to maneuver in a fiscal crisis. Louisiana's financial health is a volatile mix of massive debt and a heavy reliance on the oil and gas industry. When oil prices are high, the state's coffers are full. But when they crash, the state faces a severe budget crisis. This boom and bust cycle, combined with a high debt per capita and a shrinking population, leaves the state financially vulnerable. The state's long-term obligations, particularly to its public employees, are a massive concern, and its inability to diversify its economy makes it a high-risk state. Hawaii is a beautiful paradise, but it's also a state with a frighteningly high debt per capita. Its pension obligations and long-term retiree healthcare debts are a massive burden on its small tax base. The state is highly dependent on tourism, and a major economic shock or a natural disaster could cripple its primary source of income. With a high cost of living and a fragile, tourism-dependent economy, Hawaii's financial future is far from secure. So, if a state can't officially declare bankruptcy, what does a financial collapse actually look like? The answer is grim. First and foremost, a financially insolvent state would be forced to make drastic cuts to essential public services. We're talking about a significant reduction in the number of police officers and firefighters, the closure of schools and libraries, and a sharp decline in the quality of infrastructure, like roads and bridges. The day-to-day lives of its citizens would be dramatically impacted. Second, a state would likely be forced to drastically raise taxes to pay for its debts. This would only accelerate the outmigration of residents and businesses, further shrinking the tax base and deepening the crisis in a dangerous, self-perpetuating cycle. Third, a state could be forced to default on its bonds. This would be an unprecedented event in modern American history. Bondholders, including pension funds and individual investors, would lose billions of dollars, and the state's credit rating would be in ruins, making it impossible to borrow money in the future. And finally, the most painful consequence of all, the promise of a secure retirement for public employees would be broken. While state constitutions protect pensions, A state that is completely out of cash would have to find a way to restructure or renegotiate its obligations, potentially leading to lawsuits and a massive loss of retirement security for tens of thousands of people who work their entire lives in service to their state. The fiscal health of a state is not an abstract concept. It directly affects the quality of our lives, the value of our homes, and the security of our future. The states we've discussed today are a testament to the fact that while some states enjoy prosperity, others are facing a quiet crisis decades in the making. This is not a certainty, but a warning. For these states, the road ahead is filled with difficult choices. And for the citizens of those states, it's a stark reminder that staying informed about your government's fiscal health is no longer just a good idea. It's a necessity. What are your thoughts on this issue? Do you live in one of these states? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the stories that are shaping our world. Thanks for watching.